welcome to Pulse by Alpha Wire, the podcast where science and education meet cutting-edge technology and artificial intelligence. My name is Aldo, and each week I sit down with innovators, thinkers and doers who are working to change our world for the better. Together we explore their journeys, uncover the lessons they've learned, and take the entrepreneurial pulse that drives them on their path to success. For this episode of Pulse, we're diving into the story of a true trailblazer. Rosalia Arteaga Serrano is a politician, lawyer, author, and educator who quite literally changed history by becoming the first woman to serve as both vice president and president of the Republic of Ecuador. In 1997, during a moment of political turmoil, Rosalia stepped in as Ecuador's president for a brief but powerful 2 days. Proof that sometimes history is made in moments, not in years. Before and after that, she held some of the country's most important roles, including Vice President and Minister of Education, where her passion for learning and culture really took shape. But her impact doesn't stop at national borders. In 2021, she even put her name forward to become the first female Secretary General of the United Nations, reinforcing her commitment to global leadership, human rights, equality, and democracy. Rosalia, to me, is an absolute force of nature, still very much shaping the future, leading education and sustainability initiatives in Latin America, national boards, and writing powerful books, including Jerónimo, a deeply personal tribute to her late son. From politics to poetry, her journey is one of courage, resilience, and purpose. And that's exactly why we're talking about her and with her today. Hope you will enjoy this interview with Rosalia Arteaga Serrano. Yes, and another episode of Pulse by Alpha Wire, and I think this one is a very, very special conversation because it is with a person I admire greatly, a person that I think I am very proud to call a friend, but also someone that I think on every level has done and achieved amazing things. Rosalia Arteaga, a very warm welcome to you. So happy you could make it.
Thank you, Aldo. I am happy also to share this space and to exchange some ideas. Thank you very much for the invitation.
You're very welcome. And I'm not lying, Rosalia. I think you are a very important person in my journey, at least. And I think it's on many levels. I think first and foremost, when I started my education enterprise, you were one of the first people I spoke to in my journey in understanding the state of global education better. And you have such a great understanding, such an in-depth understanding of that. And you've had decades in your career, invested in education, which is, I think, makes you very, very fascinating. And then later on, I started with podcasting. And for the other podcasts that I'm running, Messy and Masterful, you were the very first interviewee. And so my heart skipped a beat when you said yes to also come on Pulse to talk a little bit about science and education and technology and kind of the things you see and what you think about when we address those things.
Thank you. Well, I say that I'm very happy to hear and to know that you are very successful in your entrepreneurs, especially in educational fields. As we talked some time ago, I am passionate about education. I started very early in my 17s to be a teacher. And I think after that, that I received a proposal, and very interesting one, I decided to get linked to education all my life. After being in politics and that, I created an organization, an NGO, called it FIDAL, Foundation for Integration and Development in Latin America. And since the beginning, we are linked with education and science also. We start to create first some events, some seminars about science and communication, because we need to communicate science in an appropriate way, that it's what you are doing, because many times people doesn't know what means the links between science and life and human behaviors, even now when we are in the middle of this challenging artificial intelligence intrusion in our lives, in every step of our lives. But like 30 years ago, almost, when we create the Firal Foundation, people doesn't talk about that. Then we were since the very early creation of our organization, talking about science, technology, innovation, and also education and communication. And nowadays we are in Firal, almost 27 years of going forward, working in some process, very interesting, with the kind of preparation on training the teachers to be part of these very important matters. Then we have some projects in Firal, like a STEAM Academy that works with science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, but also with ethics, because we think that ethics has to be in the core of everything, because science without ethics can destroy the world, as we can see
Yeah.
nowadays when the wars are going around, and the drones are having the potential to destroy everything. Then it's very important to apply ethics, and we talk about that with the teachers, because we especially are talking with teachers and training teachers. But of course, we are looking through the behaviors of the teachers, how they work with the students. And we organize next week, we will have a fair of science with the students in a very rural area, very distant from Quito, and with teachers that usually doesn't have that kind of training and capabilities, but we are trying to manage it. And of course, we train teachers all around the country on these matters of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And of course, also we have not the help of the Ministry of Education, but we are allowed to do it inside the schools, especially. And well, I am also linked to a European University, UNIR University, that is the International University of La Rioja, that is a Spanish one, located in the inner Spain, but at the same time is a very global, because there are students in more than 190 countries, and all is online and with a lot
Yeah.
of development. And
Yeah.
we are also creating a museum, an eco museum and
Yeah.
library that has a lot to do with science. Well,
Yeah.
these are
Yeah.
the principal matters that
Loads
are
of things.
now
Yeah.
I have in hand.
Yeah. And dear listener, Rosalia gives a great breakdown of all the initiatives she's involved with. And we'll be sure to include the links to all these initiatives in our show notes, so people can find out about it. You quickly hinted to your career in politics. You are the former vice president as well as president of Ecuador, and you were, even before that, minister of education.
Yes,
Do I have that
education,
correctly?
culture, and sports. Yes.
Education, cultural, sports. So you have an elaborate, a very extensive political career as well. You're also an author. You've written beautiful books. So you're really what I would call an uomo universalis. You have so many things that come together in all the things that you do. You're always up at the crack of dawn. So my question was going to be, in your entire career, like for people listening and say, well, I would love to have a career like Rosalia, is there one thing that you would kind of advise them? What is the one thing that thrives you? You know, if you can even summarize it in one thing, but is there kind
Yes,
of one
yes, it's
takeaway that you could
it's
pass
not
on to
easy.
others?
It's not
Yeah.
easy, Aldo, but I have
Yeah.
to say that you must be persistent, persistent
Persistent.
on what you want, or what
Yeah.
you believe, what's your passion. Of course, I
Yeah.
have to say you have to be prepared for it, and you can add some other things, but persistent is very important.
Persistence very important. And then for the many teachers that you've trained, because you were modest about Fidel, but it is one of the biggest teacher organizations in Latin America, right? It is a massive undertaking to train all these teachers, to work with all these teachers. We had the great pleasure of working with you a few years back during lockdown, in collaboration with the ministry as well, whereby we trained loads of teachers to continue the process of teaching and learning also when they're at home, because that was very difficult at that time on understanding how to be a digital teacher. But if we turn the tables, what have you learned from the teachers that you've trained? Is there anything that the teachers have taught you rather than the other way around?
First, I have to say that we remind with a lot of gratitude the help that you give to us, to the Ministry of Education during the pandemic situation with the lockdown of the teachers, and you and your platform and your collaborators pay a lot of attention to it and give us the possibility to train teachers. And it was really appreciated by the Ministry of Education and for us. Well, about teachers, I learn every day from them. We had a contest for teachers since the last 17 years. Not only teachers from Ecuador, from all over Iberoamerica. Then we have teachers from Spain, from Chile, from Argentina, from Brazil, etc., all around, from Mexico to the south. Every time that we read or observe what the teachers are doing, it is fantastic. Because even with small tools, with almost nothing, sometimes in the rural areas, with not possibilities of having materials, laboratories, or anything, even not non-connection, non-connectivity, they are doing a very good job. And we had very good examples. For example, like 2 or 3 years ago, we had a teacher that was the head of the a blind organization, school for kids, and she developed some tools and that. She won the prize of Firal, but also we asked her to be part of the Parque convocatory for the Global Teacher Award, and she was recognized like one of the 50 best teachers of the world. Then it demonstrates that nothing is impossible for a teacher. Nothing is impossible. And nowadays we have fantastic teachers, and I learned from them to be humble, to be people that work every day respecting the others, the students, and trying to give them the tools that they need for develop their careers, their lives, then every day. And also, since the last 2 3 years, we have a group of teachers that are organized, the winners of the awards and the finalists of the contests. They organize. They have an organization called Teachers of Excellence, Profesores de Excelencia in Spanish, and it's very interesting look and in certain way to participate, but it's their organization, not our organization, and to know how they move the orders, how they organize events. They publish some books of experiences of the teachers, and they are very proactive with the ministry and with others. And it's quite interesting because, especially in Latin America, the groups of teachers that are organized, they usually protest. They go to the streets and protest. But this group says we are not protesting, we are proposing. No, and that's such a difference between them. Then every day I learn from them.
That's wonderful. And there's so much in there. As you said, you need to be resilient. Those teachers sound like they're very resilient, right? Because the
Yes.
circumstances are not in their favor. They don't have a lot of economic resources. I can imagine they are in very remote areas in some cases. So it's difficult to get connected with other people. And still they have the responsibility to raise their students, right? So how would you say, when we speak about a combination of technology and education, do you think that has improved the situation for teachers in Ecuador?
Yes, yes. After pandemia, because pandemia was a big issue, and after that, people, especially the authorities, understood that it's necessary to have connectivity to give the teachers some tools, or private companies also are helping. For example, we always give the teachers some tools, some computers, some laptops, and things like that to help them to have the materials for their work. But it's also interesting that they are like with hunger of knowledge. They are resilient, of course. And nowadays in Ecuador, we have a problem with violence in Ecuador that we didn't have in the past. But now some delinquency groups are here in Ecuador, cartels, narco traffic problems, and the teachers are the first that are feeling that with the students, because recruiting is a really big situation in Ecuador nowadays, and they have to confront that and to give the kids and the teenagers emotional support. And
Yeah.
it many times has to be done by using tools like connectivity, like platforms and that. Then it's quite important. And I think most every day the importance of technology is really relevant in Ecuadorian and Latin American education. Mostly now, when teachers they need to know how to manage the tools and how to respond to the requirements of the students, because like here, like in everywhere in the world, kids are very fascinated, and teenagers also very fascinated with technology. Then it's important for the teachers to know the tools and to know if the homework that they send to the students it's with the help of ChatGPT or other tools. It's so
Yeah.
important, and
Yeah.
they need to know to confront these situations. In the other
Yeah.
hand, like in other countries, it is a big question mark about when it's time for the students to get in touch with technology, when it's the time. I know for sure that in many countries, that like in the northern countries, but also in Australia, where I have my grandkids, they are not allowed in schools to have cell phones, for example, and not allowed to have access to social networks. And I think it's wise because we need to protect them from certain risks. And in other hands, they need to be more social, presentially with the classmates, with friends, not only with the mediation of a tool like this, what we are doing now, because we are in different parts of the world. But if they are in the same classroom and they are all the time with the mobiles and with other tools, they are not developing the social
Yeah.
schedules that are very important. Then, on one hand, it's necessary to have and to learn about the variety of tools that we have nowadays. But it's also necessary to provide them with emotional support, with emotional intelligence, with the support of parents, teachers, and the classmates, the friends also in a presential way.
You speak about working directly with the teachers, but you also have a forum of education ministers. So you're also looking at the grassroots level as well as the top down level. Is that correct? And which of the
Yes.
findings that you've just discussed, what have you discussed in the forum and how concerned are education ministers?
Yeah, we started last year with this initiative that was our initiative in Firal, and we convocate the former ministers of education because it's a pity that we are not taking the advantage of the knowledge and experience that people that have been in the position can provide to the new ones. For example, these days it has been a change, and we have a new minister of education, and it's we always invite the current minister to be part of the meetings that we have, sometimes online meetings, sometimes presential meetings. In December we are going to have the last presential meeting, and probably next year we are going to continue with online meetings that facilitates, because ministers, former ministers, are not all of them in the capital, in Quito. And we talk about the different situations. The last meetings were about school and violence, talking about this situation that we have and is very scary, especially for teachers. And the good things are that we are like a think tank of former ministers of education, but we always invite experts. For example, if we are talking about migrations and education, because we have a lot of Venezuelans, like 500,000 Venezuelans because of the diaspora of Venezuela, and a lot of Colombians also. And the issue is that we talk about these situations inside the forum of former ministers, but we invite experts. And we invite teachers to give their testimony about what's happening in the classroom, because finally, the things are defined at the classroom. You know very well that because you are all the time working with educators. You can have an excellent minister. You can have very interesting tools. You can have lines, models, and that. But finally, the situation is defined with the teacher and the students. The teacher is the authority at the classroom. Then it's so important, even in these times when the knowledge doesn't come only from teachers. In the past, it was like that. Teachers were the authority, they know, and the students learn. Nowadays, it's not real because many times the students, especially in areas of technology, know more than the teachers. Maybe the teacher has to learn from the students, but the guidance, the experience has to be provided by the teacher. And
Yeah.
then that's the way that we are working on this forum with
Yeah.
teachers, real teachers in the classroom, and also experts that provide us some feelings, some studies about what we are working on. And it has been an interesting experience. It's lasting only for a little bit more than a year. And it has been quite interesting. And the Minister of Education is interested in sharing and share the experiences with us.
It's interesting how those things are all connected, right? Because violence is, of course, a lot more than education. But as you say, like the teacher is the first one who's affected by such a wave of violence into the school. So even though there's an educational impact, it affects every layer of society, really, right? So it is definitely a topic that needs to be addressed from all angles, so to say. So, this is a topic that, yeah, I feel so sorry that Ecuador is affected by this. And yeah, I hope you will find a way out. You being so international, traveling a lot, being the president in Latin America for UNIR, this international university, do you consult sources from elsewhere as well for specific problems you're dealing with? So international involvement, and are there international organizations you rely on or talk to about these topics?
Well, yes, of course. I am part of some initiatives like Waterkeeper Alliance, that of course has to be with water preservation, but also has to be with education because most of us we have to talk with the community and to talk with the schools because they must be involved in the initiatives. Everything has to be with education, as you know. Then,
Yeah.
if I go to make a speech in some places, well, I must be in contact with different persons in the different places. In Nowadays, I am part also of an initiative called it Enrich in Luck. That is an initiative to link people and companies and universities from Europe with uh, similars in Latin America. And it's quite interesting. We are a group of ambassadors that we had meetings all the time and try to get the best to replicate and to do things in common. That's one of the goals, and I think it's working. It's working. It takes time, but it's working. In terms of violence, the problem is not only from Ecuador. Ecuador probably is the one of the last countries that arrived to this bad situation. But in Latin America, you know more what's happening in Colombia, and what's happening in Mexico or in Brazil or Venezuela or Nicaragua and that, then the problem is a continental problem. I think that we must work together to have the good results that we need for especially the new generations, because they are most affected than the elders, and we must work very hard to give them best conditions of security, best condition of education, health, and others. I think the pandemic situation that all the world has put in relevance some issues like health and education has to be at the top level when the decision makers have to act. Then education is at the top level. And of course, nowadays we need to be part of this scientific environment, not to be left behind. Because if no, we are going to be always behind and continue to be non-developed countries. Then That's one of the reasons that we create the STEM Academy, and we are working hard to create the conditions for the kids, especially women's in our case, to follow scientific careers, because we have a lack of people working in science in general in Latin America. There are some exceptions, but when you see what happens with the most of the countries of Latin America, we are always consumers of what Europe, United States, and nowadays China and other countries from Asia are creating. Then we need to create our own tools based in what's going on in the world, of course. Then
Yeah.
for that, it's so important to create the conditions to have more kids interested in science, more women interested in science, and not wanting to be always lawyers, but going on to physics, and chemistry, and biology, and also in terms of engineering in all the uh, biggest couple of engineerings that we have.
Yeah. It's an interesting fact you state there that we need more science, not less. And in some countries, the political climate is not necessarily encouraging towards science. At the United States, there's been loads of funding cuts, loads of, I think, renowned institutions. They unfortunately had to close down loads of departments, loads of programs, because loads of people don't see the need for it. And I hope that it is a wave, so that it'll, and by that I mean that it'll come and go. But I do completely agree with you that there is a need for being there and contributing in a constructive way. And science could be a very good vehicle for that, as could be education, right? So it's almost of giving people the purpose that they need, which I think science and education can provide with that, through that.
Yes, I
Um,
totally agree. I
yeah,
totally agree. And I even
yeah,
think that the only way that we are going to go through these big challenges that humanity has, like climate change, for example, is through science, through
yeah,
science. Because for
yeah,
sure, science is going to be the tool that provides us with the solutions for a lot of things that are happening. I am a strongly believer in what science can do, science and
yeah,
ethics, of course,
yeah,
and
yeah.
also education. Education is a great issue, not only for personal behaviors on how you can go forward and have a good economic situation and that, but also for the society, because more educated people can have better societies. And that's a big goal that we have, a big challenge that we have here in Ecuador.
To be fair, I think the challenge is global. There's an erosion of how people interpret scientific facts. And I think social media and kind of how digital we are plays a role in that. You cannot summarize science in 130 characters, right? People want it fast, people need sound bites, otherwise, it doesn't exist, which is averse to how science can grow. Science is profound, it's in depth. You need to dive in, you need to take your time to understand it, right? So I think those two are very contrary. And the other side effect that I see there is our focus. So the focus of the next generation, the mere fact or the mere act of concentration is gotten a lot more difficult than, for instance, when I was going to school and growing up and whatever. I didn't have such a device in the school, or I didn't get any kind of homework there, or I wasn't drawn to screens as much as the generation of my daughter, or even the generation after me, Generation Z, is. So there's loads of things there to take into consideration. Now, naturally, it's not only doom and gloom. There's, of course, also upsides, because technology has also brought us a lot, right? Going back to the teachers you spoke about earlier, they're hopefully able to move more freely because of technology. But I would say it is a trade-off. And I think we
Yes,
all need to, be aware and focus on how we make this the best version of events, and not go in either, the either side of either losing our focus or losing science, or our capacity to grow further, and our willingness as well. I want to talk to you about the Eco Museum and the library, because you've been working very hard on that.
yes.
And it's already, I mean, it sounds like a beautiful, beautiful project. Can you tell me how you got involved and where the project is momentarily?
Well, concerning what you say before, when you say we didn't have the tool, we have the tools that I have before behind me, the books.
Yeah,
They were
the
our
books
best,
exactly.
and they
Yeah,
continue to be my
yeah,
best tool for me,
yeah,
for my
exactly.
generation.
Yeah,
But of
yeah,
course, I know that people nowadays are reading in tablets and that, but it's important to preserve the reading issue. Well, about
definitely.
the Eco Museum, it starts a long time ago when we tried to get a house from the municipality, a building from the municipality, the historical center of Quito, that is one of the best historical centers declared by UNESCO, but like the universal patrimonium for the whole humanity. And in that historical center, we get a building from the municipality. And like almost 3 years ago, we started to refurbishing it. It means a lot of investment, monetary investment, but a lot of creativity too, because we have to preserve the house like it was in the past, but adapting it to the modernity. And we have a beautiful house. I will send to you some videos about it. And
So
the idea is that that beautiful house contains not only collections of art or shells or things like that, but also has a lot of technology. We are creating with a group of young people from Ecuador a special artificial intelligence for the building. And we are going to have different tools like a virtual aquarium, because many kids, especially from the poor areas, they probably cannot go to see the sea, and they can feel the sea and the animals of the sea, or maybe the jungle in other cases, or the mangroves, or space also in this museum. And we are going to have um, virtual sports and also mathematics, ancestral mathematics from the eras of Incas and before, and Chinese and Egyptian. And also we are really engaged in how it's going to be with all these technological tools, and to be a big attraction for the young people, especially to be part of this initiative. That's our dream. And I hope next year we are going to inaugurate it and to have working all these tools that we are imagining and creating for this very different eco museum and library. Then the books are going to be there, as of course the digital books also, and we are going to have paintings, but also virtual art, and we are going to have the this aquarium, virtual the aquarium, and other very creative initiatives that compose a great idea to be part of this city and, of course, of my country.
nice. It sounds amazing. And you were involved, I think, from the very beginning, right? So
Yes,
you
I
know,
am the
from
creator of the idea. Yes,
you're the
I'm the
creator of
mother
the
of the
idea. There you
idea.
go. Congrats on getting it that far.
Thank you.
So do you anticipate an opening in the near future,
Yes,
or
yes,
where are
next
you?
year.
Yeah.
I don't have the exact date because it depends of the resources. We are doing it with donations because the foundation Fidal doesn't have the resources for that, and we are having some funding from private companies in Ecuador, but we need more, of course, always need more. Then for the refurbishing is one that is almost 80%, maybe a little bit more than 80% refurbishing, but nowadays, for the implementation of the museum, we need more money for that. Then we depend a lot in what we can get for opening the museum next year.
Fingers crossed, and we'll be sure to do our little bit in spreading the message on the museum. And if people want to get involved, then go to our show notes and read up more about it, because it's such a wonderful initiative and such great educational work you're doing as well in terms of a museum. Um,
Thank you. Thank
you
you very much. I will send you information about it.
do so, do so. Your journey has been incredible, because we haven't even addressed the fact that you're also a poet and you write books, and so there's so much in your career. And you've already, in the beginning of the interview, you said it's all about resilience, which I can imagine. You're a very strong person, very resilient, but at the same time you're also very capable of listening and reaching out to others, right? You're very open, very approachable. You talk to loads of people all over the world. How important do you think communication has been in your journey?
Very important. And I think that communication is a very important tool of education. Sometimes bad
Yeah,
education. It's a pity
yeah,
in different parts of the world. But communication and education are going hand to hand. And nowadays, there's a science called it. It is something between education and communication. Edu communication, edu communication, trying to put together the two things. And of course, it's very important, like with podcasts that you create to disseminate the idea of the importance of science on education and how we can get a better world with this. Then it's very important. Myself, I am a communicator. I have a TV show since the last 27 years in a open channel, but also by YouTube and Facebook Live. And we also collaborate with some universities. And I manage a couple of magazines, one for educators, call it Edu News, and the other is Verde Ecuador. It's about environmental issues. Those are two magazines that Firal is managing. And also, I have a radio program and I write for the different magazines, a couple of magazines here in Ecuador, one in New York, one in it's global magazines. And well, I am all the times working on communication. That's part of
yeah.
my life.
Your entire day is communication, right? It's a lot
Yes, yes. I
talking.
study journalism also. Yes.
Yeah, you see. Yeah. And for people who do not want to communicate, or if you fail, if you see people are hesitant to communicate or refuse to communicate, what is your remedy then? Do you have a tip?
Of course, it depends on people. It depends on
Yeah,
people. Some of
yeah,
us we believe a lot on the power of communication. Some others are totally exhausted with the amount of information that comes through digital media. Then people sometimes want to be out of this, and I
yeah,
respect that. I respect
yeah,
if people doesn't
yeah,
want to be in social networks, has doesn't want to be in communication. It's a decision, a life
yeah,
decision, not easy for sure, because everything is about communication nowadays. But I know some people, and I have a couple of friends that say enough, we don't want to be on it, and they close the media, the networks, and say no more, and I respect it.
yeah. Have you ever been on the verge of deciding no more? I don't think that's your spirit.
Not
No,
yet.
yeah,
I continue to
yeah,
be a
not yet.
social
Yeah,
person. And,
yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah. No, I see you very active on Instagram and all those things to,
yeah, yeah.
communicate what it is that you are doing. So
Yes.
it's very good.
But
But
things I consider that because you want to preserve your intimacy, your family, and that. But in any case, sometimes it's a way to be communicated with friends, with other people, and it's nice.
yeah, definitely, definitely. Thank you so much for your time. I will now go to my two very last questions. And I can hardly also, by the way, recommend your TV show, Cara Cara con Rosalia. I had the honor of being a guest a few years back, which was also very lovely. So thank you so much for that. So I can vouch for all the content that you create and all the multiple ways that you are communicating with this world and most importantly with the people in Ecuador. The first question, the first of my two very last questions, is about reading. So, in your journey as a journalist, as a minister of education, as the vice president of Ecuador, and then even as the president of Ecuador, the first female president of Ecuador, has there been any reading that has inspired you on your journey? And if so, would you care to share with our audience which book
Yeah,
has inspired you?
it depends. It depends in the time. Probably when I was younger, I read a lot of novels and fiction, and of course, stories and poetry. But nowadays, for example, I am fascinated with a book about the life of Humboldt, Alexander von Humboldt, that German that was 200 years ago was one of the most brightness minds. I recommend highly. to read a book called The Invention of Nature. I don't remember the author. It's a lady, a German lady, but The Invention of um, of the nature is such a fantastic that I probably think that Humboldt was one of the most amazing personalities in the whole world in the history. He was achieving, and he was talking 200 years ago about climate change. Can you imagine that? Or he was talking about Naturhermal, the connection between not only species but even the non alive parts like the stones, and the connection between the different areas of universe. That's so fantastic that I highly recommend. I get very inspired by Humboldt nowadays.
Great. That is a great recommendation. And we'll look up the author, The Invention of Nature,
The
which speaks
Invention
all
of
about
Nature.
Alexander von Humboldt. So that's a great recommendation. Thank you for that, Rosalia. And then to my very last question, and this is something that I am fascinated by and that I'm asking all my guests on the podcast. I think you are a morning person, but do you have a morning ritual? And if so, do you care to share? Is there something that you do every morning?
Well, I love to have chocolate for breakfast. And sometimes my family says, why not a coffee? Because people awake with coffee. Well, I awake with chocolate. Probably
With
because I'm the
chocolate.
land
Wonderful.
of chocolate, because Ecuador was the first place where the cacao were discovered in the Amazon jungle,
Wow.
in Palanda.
Yeah.
Then we are the place where the cocoa was born. Then it's
Yeah.
fantastic. For me, to start my very beginning at the morning with chocolate is good for me. And of course, I take my phone and
Yeah.
take a look of what's happening.
Yeah.
I am trying to learn another language nowadays, and then I have my Duolingo session with French.
Yeah. In
Yes, yes,
French. Oh,
because
wow. Yeah.
yeah, sometimes I go to Africa and I need some French, or to France, and then with English I can manage it, or with Portuguese, but I feel I need, and I think it's good for my brain to learn something. And I recommend everybody to learn something in a formal way, going to university or not, in a non-formal way, but learning, reading, being interested in things. It's one thing that I really, really feel that is the core of my life nowadays.
Yeah. And on that note, we will end. That's beautiful advice. Keep on learning, everybody, if you're listening, but also keep on eating chocolate.
Oh, really good.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially
Uh,
Ecuadorian chocolate.
Especially Ecuadorian chocolate.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, of
Um,
course.
Rosalia, thank you so much for your time. I wish you all the very, very best with all these many initiatives that you are working on. We'll be sure to include them in all our show notes. I'm sure the world will hear a lot more about you and all the great work that you are doing if they haven't already. Thank you so much for your time,
Thank
Rosalia
you very
Arteaga.
much, Aldo, and have a great day. Thank you.
You've listened to Pulse by Alpha Wire, produced by Natalie Piles and Amela Faisal, with great music, The Optimist, written by Holly Hamill, performed and produced by Alo. Episodes hosted weekly by me, Aldo de Pauw.